Hello and welcome to the Chamber of Commerce's first Knowledge Drop. It is sponsored by Ribbon Shop. You guys been to Ribbon Shop before?
Oh yeah.
Any members?
Let me tell you, Ed, I am cray for the carrot souffle.
Oh,
It is a most delicious treat. It's awesome. Get it every time I go.
that's fantastic. Well, they're right next door to the Chamber if you didn't know, and they're having a great deal. Brock, if you go spend $100 in buying gift cards from them, you get $20 gift card back. You get one $20 gift card back. And what could you use with that gift card? What could you buy with that gift card?
Lunch specials all day.
Yeah,
Because I'm a downtown guy.
Right?
Gotta go eat lunch.
How about Lonnie and Kelly? You guys been to Ribbon Shop?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
It's a great birthday
Enjoy-
spot.
Do you enjoy the executive lunch? $19.99.
There's your $20 gift card right there.
That's what I'm saying.
It's a great steak.
It's a great baseball cut steak.
A home run. if you will.
Oh, right. All right. Well, thank you, Ribbon Shop, for sponsoring today's Knowledge Drop. Today we're talking about downtown TIF. Before we get to that, let's all introduce who we are. So I'm Ed Brown. I'm the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Kelly Pierce. I'm the executive director for the Business Improvement District and the Downtown Association.
I'm Lonnie Hill, the Deputy Director of Planning and Community Development.
And I'm Brock Cherry, the Director of Planning and Community Development.
All right. And so downtown TIF. So probably, Lonnie, this one's for you.
Sure.
What is TIF? Because we've heard a lot of different, in fact, on the radio the other day, we tried to guess what it was. We failed miserably.
Yeah, that's a great place to start, just to make sure we're all using the same terms. So TIF is an acronym for Tax Increment Financing. And what tax increment financing is a public financing method created by the state of Montana legislature that allows local communities to publicly subsidize redevelopment in specific situations. This can include infrastructure, this can include other community improvement projects as well. So there's two types of TIF districts in the city of Great Falls. The first one, which we're not really going to be talking about today, is industrial TIF districts. And those are intended to attract and retain industries to our city. The second is urban renewal districts. And we have a few of those in our city, which includes the Downtown Urban Renewal District as well as the West Bank Urban Renewal District. So the conversation today is going to focus on the downtown district. The downtown TIF is an urban renewal TIF district.
Okay, and there are other TIF districts besides Great Falls, right? Is it a statewide thing, a nationwide thing?
Nationwide thing. You'll find in cities across the land that they utilize TIF districts to achieve economic revitalization.
Okay. What is the downtown TIF area? So what does it encompass if I was to say downtown? Because I think individuals might have a different idea of what downtown is.
There's a lot of different layers and many different boundaries for downtown. So yeah,
Yeah,
That's
Kelly
a
and
good
I
question.
deal a lot with that between the BID boundary, the TIF boundary, the historic boundary. So the downtown TIF boundary roughly runs from the historic Depot District up 2nd Avenue North all the way to 10th Street. And then on the south side generally follows 2nd Avenue South, but also gets into a little bit of Machinery Row as well. We do have a map available through the city's webpage, and we'll share a link to that map after the end of this live session as well. And the most important thing to know is if people have questions about whether they're in or out of the downtown urban renewal district, they can give our office a call and we can let them know if they're in and eligible for TIF funding.
Okay. Where does the money come? So magic pot just doesn't arrive in the city's coffers, right? So
That's right. So
I mean, if it did, that'd be great, but
yeah, so it's generated through property tax. That's kind of the short answer. So the important part of the TIF district is the I, which is the increment. So at the inception of a TIF district, there is a base value set for property tax. As time progresses and redevelopment occurs, all that additional revenue in property tax that goes to the city's general fund is captured into a TIF account, and that money specifically can be used towards those revitalization efforts.
One way to look at how TIF districts benefit where they are is the folks within the district, the properties within the district. These are monies eligible for only those projects and for only those properties within that district. So you really get to see, if you're part of a TIF district, these monies being incorporated to support where you are at. So some people think that TIF is a additional tax where it isn't. It's taking a portion of the already taxable value there and allocating it specifically towards the infrastructure and economic redevelopment of the TIF district.
Okay, good. Does the money need to be paid back?
Great question. So TIF awards are kind of set up like a grant, except they're set up in a reimbursement model. So if you are pursuing a project and you want to pursue TIF funding, you would get the TIF award before you commence construction, and then the developer or the applicant would be responsible for funding that project on the front end. And then once work is complete, then we process a reimbursement for the amount that was awarded, basically.
And to go further with that, and I'll kind of tee it up for Lonnie, as far as what is the skin in the game from the property owner? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah.
How does this benefit them? So the city has its administrative programs, which require a 50% match, and you're only to apply for a certain amount. But anything outside of that is a general TIF application, which can go to the commission for their consideration, where that amount of match may vary, just depending on the scope of the project.
Yep, and there's other revitalization efforts that mostly have to do with public infrastructure that are set up with different models. But like Brock said, there's some flexibility in the state statute that allows us to approach each project differently depending on what the request is. But the general rule of thumb is that it is that kind of grant setup where you're reimbursed on the back end, and the intent is to have it be up to a 50% match of the total project. So this is helping but not paying for the entire project, basically.
Perfect. If you have questions, you can submit them online and we'll ask those questions. And I think Jordan has a question, right?
Yep, we have a question in our comment. Please tell us more about using TIF for creating housing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the state legislature modified the TIF state law to include workforce housing in the eligible items for TIF. So before that state law change, we had already started enacting some programs to help identify improvements to the interior of buildings. So that would include our life safety program that we're going to get a little bit more into. But basically, we were able to fund improvements to buildings that improve accessibility, ADA, things like that. So a lot of conversations with folks about elevators, ADA upgrades to bathrooms, as well as fire suppression, which is a huge investment that folks have to make when they're converting the occupancy of these old downtown buildings from whatever they were before to current residential space. So there is funding available for fire suppression.
To add to that, as Lonnie mentioned, the Montana State Legislature has TIF funds to promote workforce housing. And I know when we say workforce or affordable housing, everyone's like, what is that? What is affordable? This is something that we can also follow up with links or information within the comments later. These are definitions from the state of Montana, which is generally when we talk about workforce, you take your median income and then it's a percentage, either a little bit less or maybe a little bit more of what that is for that area. And basically, developers or builders who provide units to be within that area can be eligible for TIF funds. But they're also going to have that system or that program available in perpetuity. So this doesn't mean that some market rate developer can come in and be like, give me all the TIF funds so I can build $8,000 a month units. Now you could come in and be like, hey, I want to build a product which is mixed, which may have a mix of market units and also affordable housing units. And then we would look at that proposal and see where would they be eligible for TIF dollars.
Good.
We got another one in the comment.
Okay, go ahead.
It would be helpful to describe a few projects that were deemed ineligible for TIF funding.
So,
You don't have to get specifics, but maybe
Yeah.
an idea that,
let me think about that one, because what we try to do is come up with a way where we can at least fund some part of a project, because projects are usually pretty big and complicated. But
I have an example.
yeah,
So when a property owner comes and puts in their application, and we look at the funding ratio, so where more of the project's costs and funding is coming from TIF than it is their own matching dollars. So having that financial structure of how you're gonna complete the project and making sure that you're not using only TIF dollars. So we have had a couple of applications where the funding just wasn't structured.
Yeah, if the
Adequately.
pro forma doesn't meet our expectations, or even if the time frame doesn't meet our expectations, those would be a few categorical reasons to not approve a project. Other examples would be like if you are making interior renovations to a building, but you're not adding those ADA elements, then we're not funding those types of projects. The other thing that comes to mind is one of the programs deals with facades. We do have a program available to provide funding for facade improvements, but we have not funded a lot of either non-primary street-facing facades, so side facades, rear facades, things like that. In our programs that we administer, we're a little bit limited on what we can and cannot fund, but what we always tell people is that if they have an idea that they think is close to the intent of the program, we have the ability to take those applications and put them in front of the city commission for final approval. So we've done that for a couple of different times for different projects. So really what we love to do is just sit down with folks, talk about the projects that they want to pursue, and see how we can incorporate some TIF funding into the request.
It's really important to acknowledge that TIF can be somewhat of a controversial item. Because when people pay their taxes, initially they're like, hey, I want these to just go towards regular infrastructure, public good, everything else. The reason we have TIF is we know that the health of our city transcends that. That the economic improvement of areas such as downtown can bring immense value when it comes to jobs, commerce, opportunities, what have you. So one of the things I think we really try to do at TIF is to think, we don't want it to just be, this is just a blatant improvement that only provides opportunity to a singular entity without any second or third order effects to benefiting the overall community and the overall area, which goes into what Lonnie was saying, like, yes, let's do facade improvements where people do see things. Or let's add value such as like to where we have the murals and maybe use TIF monies to illuminate those things. And in doing that, not only are we illuminating a beautiful asset, but we're also adding additional security for those who frequent our community. So the way to look at TIF is it's meant to have effects that just don't benefit a singular entity, but the kind of entire ecosystem.
Yeah, the whole district.
Yep.
Good. So the questions have covered some of the questions we have, but I'll ask them directly because you brought it up.
Yeah.
What can you use TIF for? So if I was to buy a building and I wanted to do things, like what can I use them for?
Yeah, great question, Ed. So the first traditional sense of TIF dollars is for public improvements such as public infrastructure. So what comes to mind is if folks are remodeling an existing building downtown, there's a good chance that maybe the sidewalks in front of it are not up to current ADA standards. So there's TIF funding to replace those sidewalks to bring them up to ADA standards.
And those sidewalks are the business owner's responsibility
Correct.
anyway, so the TIF dollars helps offset that cost.
Right. The city also pursues sidewalk and street improvement projects around downtown. There was a project that was approved recently to redo the 7th Street streetscape in front of the Sip and Dip, that kind of block area there. So we do pursue more block-wide projects, but a property owner certainly has an ability to fix deficiencies with TIF funding. So that's kind of your traditional model of TIF funding. That sort of request would go in front of the city commission for approval because it's public infrastructure. And then the next type, or really the three that I think are the most exciting that we're here to talk about, is the building programs that were approved by the city commission. So a few years back, as part of Ordinance 3229, they approved the TIF downtown building programs, which established 3 categories for funding that are more building specific as opposed to public infrastructure specific. And again, just like Brock said, the intent of the program and the reason it meets state statute is the improvements that are proposed have to have a greater benefit than to just the property itself, so the benefit to the entire district. So when we're preserving a facade, we're benefiting benefiting the entire district. When we're putting fire suppression to one of these buildings that has other buildings attached to it, it has a larger impact than just that building. So let's go into those three real quickly.
Okay.
The first one is the facade program. As you can imagine, it's pretty straightforward. It opens up financing for TIF financing for assisting downtown building owners who are pursuing facade renovation efforts. So think about getting an architect involved, repointing brick, adding awnings, adding lighting. All those sorts of things are on the table, and we love talking to people about those projects. We've had some successful applications for those type of remodels downtown.
Lonnie, we get a lot of questions about windows,
Yeah.
whether or not they're included as an eligible item.
Yep, so the primary facing facade, we do find windows to be eligible. We've had some other inquiries about side facing windows and things like that, and we've considered taking those questions to the commission to get guidance from them on whether they see the benefit as well. But the easiest way to answer that is if you're remodeling the front facing facade of your building, windows are certainly eligible.
Yeah.
But we will caveat, when in doubt, talk it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because
for sure, ask.
there's so many different scenarios and situations. So if you're hearing us say, well, you may not be able to do this, still follow up and let us vet it, because the situation may be different, or there may be additional facts to the fact pattern that we need to consider.
Absolutely. So that was the first program bucket, the facade program. The second is the life safety code compliance, and that's designed to stimulate increased public safety and handicap accessibility projects in the downtown. So that's what I was talking about when we're upgrading bathrooms to ADA, when we're upgrading elevators or entryways. People who go around downtown know that often the doors to a lot of businesses have trippers or things like that. So part of these remodeling projects involves replacement of entryways, ingress, egress, that sort of thing. And another big bucket in that category is fire suppression. When you're talking about one of the largest investments for remodeling and building downtown, fire sprinklers are probably at the top of the list. You gotta tap into the main in the street, you gotta run a new fire line into the building, and you have to retrofit all this equipment into these buildings. The ticket runs up pretty high. We do have TIF funding available for those improvements. So that's really important for people to know.
And know that these requirements, especially when it comes to fire sprinklers, it's not just because we're trying to create an opportunity to be, gotcha, another thing we're gonna require you to spend on. There are state and federal codes that we need to meet, but when you also consider the downtown district specifically, we have zero lot line development, meaning that the buildings will build until the very edge of their property lines, and they're right next to each other. So if a fire happens in one, what happens?
Yeah.
It's
The whole block.
It's a domino
Yeah,
effect.
Not today.
So, again, this program is a phenomenal program because it builds in resilience when it comes to the type of fire service we provide to our downtown property owners and those who shop, live, have fun here to ensure that everyone's going to be safe.
And there was one more, right?
Yep, there's one more. Thanks, Ed. The last one is the environmental safety program, and this one's a pretty small bucket, but it really think like lights and cameras, that sort of thing. So there's funding available to eliminate blight based on the principles of what's called CPTED, or crime prevention through environmental design. So we hear from a lot of folks that they have issues, whether it's their back doors or the front lighting. If it's not well lit, then it can be a place where people congregate when they don't want them to for loitering. So there is some money available for that. And I'll segue from that into the amounts for each program, because I think that's important for people to know as well.
Okay.
So the environmental safety program has a small cap of $5,000 available for those improvements. The life safety code compliance program has $75,000 available. And the downtown facade program has $50,000 available. So when you add those up, it's $130,000 that's on the table that staff can approve administratively so long as these projects are deemed eligible through our review. But just know that we do have cases where if these buildings are large enough, the fire suppression might alone be much more than that amount. We have the ability to take those requests in front of the city commission for their consideration in special circumstances. So when we talk about workforce housing or other catalyst projects like that, it's
They'll
something that
exceed those amounts, possibly.
we have the ability to do that.
Okay.
Which is great, because that's why you have an elected body, to ensure that when these funds are being utilized, being that we're stewards of tax funds, that they're being utilized correctly, that they're not seen as maybe sort of a slush fund that we use in a way that's inconsistent to only meet the means of development, but again, to ensure how are we bringing value to the city of Great Falls, and in particular to this TIF district, how are we bringing value to our downtown asset?
Great, great. So I will cancel my TIF request for the large screen TVs I was gonna put because they don't qualify,
If
right?
it was part of your security system,
Well,
but
it's
even
not.
then, we probably may take a double look at it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we've had the question come through, and it was, a member came in as well, about the approval process. And at what point do they need to talk about the approval process? And then with that, are you soliciting a TIF? So if someone comes in and, hey, I have a permit to build whatever, are you advertising, hey, we might have TIF funds to help you there, or is it kind of on the individual?
That's a great question. I think that's an area where the city could definitely improve, is integrating our processes together. And so, perfect example, someone comes in for a building permit or a building permit is submitted. If we get them too late, then we might not be able to take them down the road of TIF if work has commenced, because that's one of the eligibility items, is that you cannot start work until your award has been granted.
Okay.
So I think that's something that we will certainly work on our side, is to try to integrate our pre-application building permit meetings to bring up that TIF conversation, to make sure that everyone is knowledgeable about what's available.
Which generally for larger scale projects, it's a lot easier for our staff to catch. Because the larger scale, you have a lot of our more seasoned staff, you have more members there for us to catch it. What makes it difficult are like the administrative programs, because there's a lot of opportunities when it comes to your facade improvement, your safety improvements, what have you, and those expenses are maybe between, $500 to $10,000, $15,000, like still considerable, but those aren't things that we generally have a built-in meeting for all of those things.
And some of that work might not even require a permit.
Sometimes it doesn't.
If it's a small enough project, like adding cameras to your building, for example, unless you have to pull an electrical permit for whatever you're doing, you may not talk to a planner or someone in our office who's knowledgeable about TIF. So I think this event is great for that purpose. And I think Brock and I are definitely interested in getting out and getting the word around about what's available from us.
Okay, so what is the process? If I'm interested in TIF and I think I qualify,
Yeah.
what do I do?
Yeah, so the first step is always to reach out to us. We schedule pre-application meetings for all sorts of different requests. We have an open door, we're available, we love to sit down and talk to folks about their projects or their dreams or anything like that. So that's the first thing I would tell people, is call us and reach out to us. If you hear something out from someone else and you're not sure if it makes sense or not, call us to double check. We will be the ones who tell you whether you have a project that has eligibility or not. So don't take that information for granted. And so there is a process. That's an important thing for people to know, is that this kind of models a grant in a little bit of a way, and that you do have to fill out an application. There are requirements of what we're looking for in that application. A few examples of that would be the scope of the project, for example, feasibility of the project, time frame of the project, your bidding requirements, and then also any other information that might help tell the story. We often ask for a narrative that describes the bigger picture of the project. Because what we want to ensure is that we're meeting the state statute and then also the local ordinance that has been passed about those items, like benefiting the district and all that sort of stuff. So we really take a close look at that. And the pre-application process can take a little bit of time of back and forth with an applicant to try to get the right information from them. But we're here to help them along the way. We want folks to know that. Don't hesitate to reach out. So once we review the completeness of the application, it goes into the review process. And we kind of highlighted two different potential processes for TIF requests. If it goes to the city commission, it involves first going to the Downtown Development Partnership for a recommendation, and then ultimately the city commission. These are public hearings, it takes time. You're looking at a couple of months, 2 to 3 months to take a request through like that. The beauty of the administrative process that we do for those smaller amounts is once you have a complete application, we conduct the review and the completeness check in-house. You can get a reward or an award in 2 or 3 weeks. It can all happen pretty fast. So that is one advantage, is the amounts are lower, but we can be a lot faster in our response. But I just want to make sure that people understand it's not as simple as just writing your name down on a piece of paper and getting the award. There is a bit of an application process to vet these projects to ensure that these public monies are being used for what they're supposed to be used for. And Kelly knows all about that with her grant programs as well.
Yeah.
So.
And it shouldn't intimidate you. Yes, we need to be accountable. Again, these are tax monies. We should have records that are precise, that have the details of how they're being utilized. But we are here to help educate you so your application is successful. And we're here to guide you. And I would hate that the thought of, man, I'm gonna have to go to a public hearing, or I'm going to have to do this. That's impossible. It is.
It's not that bad.
It really isn't that bad. Our staff is very amenable. Our folks downtown, if you need to go to them, the city commissioners are pretty nice, and I'm not just saying that.
I feel
But-
like there is that perception of there's
Yes.
red tape at every corner, and I feel like it's gotten so much better as the city has had these other programs in place for the last couple of years to try and eliminate some of that lengthy process. So, yeah, it's really not a difficult,
And it still is getting better. Like,
yeah.
we still want to improve the process. We want people to understand it. We want to try to prevent, Ed, what you brought up when your members said. Nothing frustrates me more is when I hear about this business that's trying to do good, that's kind of strapped for cash. We're in a crazy place when it comes to construction costs, labor, interest rates. And when I think on the back, I'm like, man, we could have utilized some TIF dollars there. I want to mitigate that as much as possible. So again, as Lonnie mentioned, we hope to have better mitigation. We hope to train our staff that when it comes to projects in this area, that they can maybe flag it and be like, hey, Lonnie, did you know about this? Or hey, Brock, what have you? But we want to continue to improve the user experience of utilizing this tool.
Yeah, we do a lot of referrals out of our office because they come to us and ask, what grants are available, what can we use, what can we do? And so we send people down to you guys all the time. And we don't know the ins and outs of the project, so that's why you're the experts. But yeah, it's just keep talking about it, so.
Yeah. Looks like we have another question from online.
2 questions come in. First question, isn't the conditional use permitting process the way to go if you want to catch it early?
So the conditional use permit process, that's a zoning administration that we do. And generally, a conditional use is something that is before anyone does substantial construction, which is great for us because we will catch it right then and there. When we say that you can only apply for TIF before construction commences, that means the building permit. So if you're in the midst of a zoning application, like maybe you're doing a conditional use permit, maybe it's a variance, maybe it's a planned unit development, you're still in that window where we can see if TIF is an option. It's once we have a building permit issued, that's when the statute is very clear that the project is no longer eligible.
Okay.
All right, second question. Generally speaking, how do updates to the city's CUP take place? Or CUP, the capitalized CUP, so it might be CUP.
I wonder if they're referencing the CIP, the capital improvement projects?
Possibly.
So, and that's important. So we have our urban renewal district. We have a downtown master plan, which kind of represents our CIP document, like our capital improvement plan of how we intend on utilizing those monies. That plan was, our current plan, Kelly, can you
2012.
Yeah, so it's a little dated.
Needs a little update.
One of the things that we're doing right now, shameless plug, we're updating the city's growth policy, which is like our master plan for the next 20 years. And one of the things that I hope we get to talk about as we're updating that are what other specific area plans need to be updated. And I think what you're going to see after we complete that effort, which is probably going to be our next 12, 14, 18 months, hopefully sooner than that, we're going to be coming to those other plans so that they can be updated. One of the things And Lonnie, maybe you can expand on this. For instance, the state has said, yes, TIF can be used for affordable housing projects. However, I don't know if our current master plan says it as explicitly.
I think it mentions it on more vague terms, but what we'll need to do is update it per the updated legislature for sure. Yeah. So yeah, and there's those two documents that overlay the downtown district. There's the downtown master plan and then the downtown urban renewal plan.
Yeah, there's two different
Yes.
ones.
Urban
So
renewal.
we'll have to update two things.
So I have Lonnie.
I'm just saying, because I get confused. And when you say all those things that you just said, like, thank you for explaining TIF.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of questions answered there. And maybe this is a future knowledge drop for just downtown.
Yep.
Because we get, because you just mentioned like 4 different things, I think. And I know, Kelly, you're a part of 2 different things. And I can't explain it. A lot of our members have no idea what the difference is and why it's important. So let's table that. But you brought that up and I was like, I think we need to have a conversation about what you all just said. That it might apply to the TIF in the future, but just all those different programs that are involved in the city can kind of be overwhelming to folks.
And the one thing that I'll kind of say though, when in doubt, talk it out. Because we do have people in our office, myself, Lonnie, other folks who are there to help you. And, you know, I've had people come in saying, I'm starting a business downtown, I have no idea what I'm doing, I don't know where to start. Well, you may not know precisely where to start, but you are in the right place to get started. And when people come in early and we get involved early, generally we can support outcomes which are a lot more favorable.
Perfect,
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, there's a lot of layers to the things that we do,
Mhm.
but, yeah.
Any other questions on TIF?
They possibly could have been referring to the conditional use permit. City of Great Falls commented.
Okay, so yeah, the conditional use permit is like an added layer of zoning entitlement for specific uses in the city of Great Falls. An easy example would be like a hazardous materials CUP. So if you are handling hazardous materials, you are required to pursue a conditional use permit to get the permission to conduct that activity on your site. So we have a chart that lists all these different uses and what's required, whether a CUP is required or not. And the good thing is the timing is correct, where as part of the growth policy, we will evaluate all of those things and determine whether a CUP is necessary for those or not. Every community in the country does it differently. A good example that Brock brought to the table is that in some communities around the country, drive-throughs require CUPs. Here in the city of Great Falls, we do not. We just permit them through the permit review process. So for most of these downtown projects that we're processing, there's not going to be that added CUP requirement for it because their use is going to be a permitted use downtown, such as housing or a restaurant or whatever else you can imagine.
Great. Any other questions, Cobb?
Nope.
Okay, so Kelly, you're here and there's something else
Yes.
that kind of relates, and it's another acronym, the BID.
The BID, yes, is the Business Improvement District. We again have our own very specific boundaries because we are funded through a special assessment. Again, very similar to how TIF is funded. Our property owners in our district on their property taxes have a special assessment line item that comes to fund the Business Improvement District. And our money can only be spent within our boundaries. But we do offer grant programs for property owners that want to do permanent improvements to their properties. Again, that ADA compliance, putting up walls, flooring, just basically helping with the construction costs. And they're not huge amounts of money, but if it's a new business, it's $5,000, and there's a percentage that goes along with existing or expanding businesses. And then we also have a business incentive grant that allows folks to have 1 month's rent paid for their tenants. So the tenant is signing a lease. Within 60 days of that lease signing, if they come and see us, we can pay up to $2,500 for a month's rent, which is super helpful for new businesses trying to get off the ground and going. So we do have some different funding options available that don't conflict with TIF. There's not a one or the other. If you are eligible and within the BID boundaries, then most likely you're gonna qualify. And they are very underutilized. So again, it's that, how do you communicate that before the project gets started? So, yeah, we work with the city a lot as well as projects come up, just to educate folks on what all is out there, because there's more than you think.
And that application process,
It's very similar. You have to come see us before construction starts, make sure that it is a viable project, make sure that, you know, your property taxes are paid, because we won't fund a project if you're delinquent on those. So just checking the boxes and making sure that we're doing due diligence as well.
okay, we
Yeah,
can reach out.
Fairly easy, yeah.
reach out to
Our
your office.
We've got applications, they're available on our website as well, if you want to take a look at it, so, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Jordan?
Nope.
Anything else you all want to add about TIF or
No,
bid?
just
or?
the last one on the list was who to contact
Oh,
for
yep.
TIF stuff. So I want to make sure that people know who to contact. TIF is processed through planning and community development, where Brock and I work. So you can reach out to either Brock or I directly to ask questions, or also just call our main number, and you get routed to someone else who might be able to help you as well. So that's planning and community development. We're in room 112 of the Civic Center, and the main line is 455-8430.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for your time today. We got some exciting things happening tonight, right, Kelly?
Yes,
Something tonight
that's
that,
my casual attire today.
Right.
We've been putting up barricades and all sorts of fun things, no parking signs, for the downtown Christmas stroll this evening, 41st annual. So the streets will close at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We ask cars to be off of Central by about 2:30 so that we can get in there. And the Polar Plunge always takes a little longer to set up, so 4th and Central will be a little bit congested around 2. But it's gonna be a great night. The weather is amazing.
right, it's gorgeous out.
Yeah, a little windy, so hang on to your hats, but come down and check it all out. We've got some really fun stuff this year. The Hawaiian theme is killing it. People are
Awesome.
loving it, yeah. So
Wow.
we'll have Elvis at about 6 o'clock in front of US Bank. You'll want to check him out. Yeah, so lots of fun stuff.
That's awesome. Is
Yeah.
anyone getting plunged that's in this room?
No.
If I didn't have to run around the rest of the night
I understand.
soggy, I might.
You know, I might not do that, but I could go to Ribbon Shop.
That's fantastic. That sounds good for lunch.
It sounds good. And after, you
And
know,
after
just
lunch?
keep going.
I believe they have a great happy hour. I think it's tonight as well. It's Friday. I don't know if it's on Friday, but they have a good happy hour. They have football game promotions. There's a big sign outside the front of the Ribbon Shop with all their new promotions, which is fantastic. But I still think you should do the Polar Plunge. If I bring you a swimsuit?
TBD.
TV.
You know?
No, that's a different one.
Have
Isn't
until
it?
7 o'clock.
Yeah, we've done a lot of time.
Anything else anybody would like to add?
No, thanks for doing these. These are great. If you think of other topics that you want to bring us in on,
Yeah.
Brock and I are happy to sit down.
Yeah, for
Kelly will
sure.
be in here
Anything
too, I'm sure.
downtown.
Yeah, same with the
Gotcha.
community. Any other topics you want us to cover? I know how to get a hold of Brock in the city pretty easily, and Kelly, or whatever we want to talk about. And let us know if you have any feedback for us on Knowledge Drop. This is our first one.
Awesome.
So thank you all for this. Thank you guys for
Thank you.
joining, and thanks for the questions. And have a wonderful Friday. We'll see you at the stroll.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
All right, perfect.